our church, and we heard that word a lot today, and they're not comfortable around them. And so Paul comes back and declares what God is doing in the Gentile world. And there's a whole thing written about Gentiles and circumcision. You go to Romans and the just shall live by faith and all of that. It's pretty awesome how it spells out Abraham was justified even before he was circumcised. It's an awesome message. So Paul knows this. Bringing Titus back. Folks, this is a bold statement. Paul is trusting completely in what God has done in Titus' life, not what he wants to do in Titus' life, but what God has done in Titus' life. Because Paul's a Jew, don't forget that. But Paul is totally trusting in the finished work of the cross on everyone's life, believing that what God can do. And not for 1 second did he put or lay a yoke of bondage on Titus to be circumcised. Now what's that mean to us? What's that? How do we bring that understanding? If Paul were to tell Titus at this point to be circumcised, it would have totally torn down all of the ministry that God had given him. Because now all the Gentiles are like, whoa, he told Titus to be circumcised. We all got to do that. Must be, we need to follow the law. And so they go back to another gospel. Paul said he marveled at the Galatians following. Anyway, are you with me this morning? Do you understand? I hope this isn't too far ahead. I hope I'm not talking too fast. So this bold statement, Paul even does something else to verses 1 through 4. Which I believe is really bold. He calls these Judaizers, these people, Judaism, they're Jewish people, okay? They're Jewish leaders nonetheless. And what's he called them? False brethren. He calls them false teachers. That is bold. Why? Because Paul is upholding the work of the cross of Jesus Christ above all things. Above all things. He's not allowing for 1 second, 1 hour, any religion to come in here at this point and tear down the work of the gospel. And folks, that is exactly what churches do today. When we come in and we try to put some form of ceremony or ritual or tell somebody that's in the church that's saved, well, that's fine, you're saved, but you got to do something else. You got to line yourself up with our group, okay? If you're going to be that special Christian, you got to be what we are and follow our list. Don't think for a second it doesn't happen, because it does happen. Many people get yokes of bondages put on them after they get saved. And then they feel like, well, what's the use? I can't do this. This is too hard. This is too difficult. I can't live it. Because the church is putting a yoke of bondage on them. When all God wants to do is set you free. This is a big deal to Paul. Look at verse 18 and 19. He says, for if the inheritance of the law is no longer a promise that God gave to Abraham. No, wait, no, I'm on chapter 3. I knew that wasn't right. Okay, that's my mistake. Okay, for if I build again those things which I destroyed, I make myself a transgressor. What are the things that he destroyed? He's destroying the teaching, the religious teaching of following the law for justification. Paul never says the law is unjust and holy. He declares it is just and holy. Only, if you look in chapter 3, only that is a schoolmaster to the Jewish people to bring them to the point of salvation, and to us as well, to help us understand we've transgressed God's law and we can't fulfill it. Someone else has got to do it in our place, and that is Jesus Christ. That's what the law is there for, to help us understand. Paul is tearing this teaching down, and he says, in verse 18, let's read it again, for if I build again those things which I destroyed. In other words, he destroyed that teaching of religion. But now you're telling me I need to build that back up again. I make myself a transgressor. A transgressor of what? A transgressor of the law of grace. Yes. The Spirit of life that has set me free. He is now transgressing that. He deals with that in Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 4. Very, very bold statement. Where he says to them who have tasted of the heavenly gift, who have been partaken of the assembly of the congregation and seen what God is doing and turn away, it's impossible for them to come back. It's pretty bold. That's pretty scary. Paul is saying this. If I do that, that's what I'm doing. If I build up following the law for justification again and not by grace, that I've totally become a transgressor. For I, look at verse 19, through the law, died to the law, that I might live to God. There the law became his schoolmaster, brought him to Jesus. Now, through the law, the understanding that I can't fulfill it, now I died to the law, that I might live to God. He's getting away from religious teachings. All it does is bring us into bondage and keep us from living by faith. Let me tell you something in closing this morning. Satan wants to steal your liberty.
Amen.
The Bible says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is liberty. Satan wants to steal that. If he can get us all to be religious, he's got us exactly where he wants us. Because religious people aren't living by faith. We're trusting in our religion. And living by faith liberates us. Living by faith sets us free. Not to sin or go back to sin. Not go back and eat your own vomit. The Bible says that. A dog returns to his vomit. Not to go back that way, but to continue on living for Jesus. Living in the Spirit. Living by faith. The Bible says, if you continue reading Galatians 5, we're going to learn about that on Wednesday night. This is exactly what Satan wants to steal from you. He wants to steal your liberty, bring you back to religion. But you need to understand something. The moment you believed in Jesus, you died to religion. Religion no more has dominion over you. Now allow Him to be Lord of your life. Look at verse 20. Let's read our text again this morning. This is why Paul writes this. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. That point right there, he's born again. The old man is gone. The new has come. Christ is living in me. Now, I have to continue living in the flesh. That's what Paul is saying. I'm not dead physically yet, although he longs for it, although we as believers should long for the return of Christ, but yet we are still living in the flesh, so what do we have to do? The life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave Himself for me. Do you know? Have you even thought of how much God loves you? Have you even thought about it? And folks, when you find out about someone loving you so much, there's something that God puts in us and how He's made us that causes us to totally change. Let me tell you something. I know I talked about dogs going back to their mama, but there's something about a dog that's different than any other animal. Why is dog called man's best friend? Huh? Pretty good. Never thought of it that way. You can kick a dog, mistreat a dog, send him running, but if you are nice to him, even after that, and bring him back, and pet him, good doggy, give him a treat, all that stuff, that dog will be with you for the day he dies. I'm not saying that about every dog. We got some dogs which are crazy, but most of the time, that dog will. You can't get rid of that dog. You can try to shoot it off and it'll come back. There's something about that relationship that that dog forms with mankind. You see, there's something about it. I'm not calling you a dog, but there's something about it that when we understand when someone loves us so much, it changes us. It melts our heart. It just consumes us. And we begin to seek that person out that loves us so much. And love, he says, the love of Jesus, the love of God, he talks about so much. Knowing how much he loved him, he being the Lord, loving Paul. He says, the life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I don't know how you get past that, folks. I don't know how you get past the fact that Jesus died for you, gave himself for you, and if you live like you don't care. How can you live like you don't care that the Son of God died for you? I don't understand. Do not quench the Spirit this morning. Do not take for granted God's mercy and say, oh well, He'll forgive me. Stop doing that. Stop doing that right now. Stop allowing Satan victory over you and start getting victory by living for Jesus today.
Yeah.
Let's all stand.